Thank you, Ed. Appreciate your prayer. I know that we're all hopeful June will feel better. Well, welcome aboard. We're always glad to see every one of you. I really didn't know when I designed this slide whether we'd have snow or not, but I kind of figured it might happen, so that explains the design, snowflakes. It's not wishful thinking. I used to pray that it would snow, but I have stopped praying that prayer a long time ago. Particularly when I encounter people driving in it.
When you were going to school or when you were teaching?
When I was teaching school. Oh boy, that's what I need, you know, is them to come on. University will not meet today. Yay! But you always had to make it up. That was the problem. I was trying to think of something that would cheer you up. Just maybe you need to go out and make some random purpose. Sometimes I feel like if I bought another gadget, I'd be happy. Hasn't worked yet, but it may. So maybe something like this. I don't know, what do you think? Maybe in your living room. Would that brighten up your life, you think? Maybe not. Okay. That's quite expensive, actually. Imagine if you brought that home, you know, to your wife and said, "Hey, honey, let's find a space for this. It's so beautiful." You might regret that, I don't know. Or you might be hauling it off back to the store. If you go to Washington, D.C., and I'm sure almost all of us have at one time or another, and gone to the Smithsonian, Royal Academy of Art, that's in London, the Academy of Art there, the wonderful paintings they have. And you go up to the Capitol, with an O, a Capitol building, and there, of course, is the Rotunda, which is the big round thing. Rotunda, I always thought it would be a good girl's name for some girls.
You're done.
I knew if I worked hard enough, I'd finally wake you up. I'm like, Russ, get ready. Listen, man, I've heard some cuss words in the Marine Corps, and that wasn't much, to be honest with you. Could do a lot worse than that. Oh, seriously, I like the sound, Rotunda. It has a nice sound. But if you go there today, you will see in the Emancipation Hall a number of statues that have been put up by various states. There's some really, really important political figures up there, statesmen, people that had plenty of money somehow have their statue there. But there's one statue that's recently been put there in the last couple of years of a little girl about 7 years old. A little girl about 7 years old, and the statue is in the Rotunda. And I just want to kind of see if you know who this little girl might be. Any clue, anybody? Who is this little girl? Now, how do you know that? The water fountain gives it away. So what? The water pump, yeah, which you can still see at Ivy Green in Tuscumbia, Alabama. Now, if you look a little closer, how do you think the sculptor did? Now, what was he trying to capture, do you think? The sculptor here, he's got a 7-year-old girl, and he's trying to capture some moment, a moment. And that moment was crucial. And the operative word is water, okay? So what did that mean to her that day? It meant there is a connection between objects in the world, what you can feel, and names. Things have names. They can be identified. Wow. You say, well, that's a sort of a small thing. Well, it wasn't really all that small, was it? So that's why we have the statue, right? Because something began at that moment. But now none of this would have happened. And there is no statue, by the way, to the person who made this happen. Although I might argue rightly there ought to be. But you know, the woman who made this moment possible is a woman named Anne Sullivan. And that's Ann Sullivan on the right, of course, and the young Helen Keller on the left. Right after this happened, someone took a picture. This is 1888. And it's at Ivy Green. And a photographer came from Huntsville, Alabama, and took this picture. We don't talk a lot about Ann Sullivan, but Ann Sullivan made that moment happen. It's that kind of wonderful possibilities that are in the hands of people who teach or who share their lives. Now, she wasn't an ordinary classroom teacher. She didn't get up and write things down on the blackboard. She shared her life, essentially, and that was the plan. And I guess in that way, we're all teachers. You know, we're really all teachers because we share our lives with people. And now I'm saying all this because James seems to be bothered by the fact that people don't realize the impact they can have for good. And so because of petty rivalries and because of petty ego concerns, they're actually hurting other people rather than helping them. Now, I suppose if you talk to Ann Sullivan, she's from Boston, a nice Irish lady, and said, Miss Sullivan, you're going to make a profound difference in the history of the world. She said, I don't know what she would have said. She might have said, I'm just here to help Helen. I'm just here to help Helen, that's all. I don't have any big ideas in mind. You know, teachers really are amazing. Just amazing what they can do. Some things that seem almost impossible, for example. Just incredible things have happened once someone gets into the hand of a good, caring teacher. And while this may be a little much to ask, I wish I could teach my two to read because they would learn leaving certain deposits on rugs is not a great idea. But I've seen dogs do amazing things. I missed this year, there was usually a little Jack Russell that appeared on Jay Leno who broke balloons. And the balloon that was left standing would indicate the Super Bowl team that was going to win. I don't know if that's happened yet this year, but that's always fascinating to me. Some amazing things happen in people's lives when you have someone who really wants to share. And James is aware of that, and so maybe he wants us all to understand, well, there are people who teach in a formal way, and that's great, and we appreciate and applaud these people because it takes a lot of dedication. And not only that, but it takes a lot of overcoming of cynicism after a while, just to keep on. But in a sense, James was saying, oh, wait a minute, Bob, we're all teachers. And one of the things we want to do, and I've gone over this before, we as teachers, let's dedicate ourselves to the glory of the Lord. Great things will happen when we do that. We're not in competition, and I'm sure you've heard it a million times before, there's no competition among lighthouses. They all have a job to do. If one doesn't shine better or brighter than the other, there's something that needs to be done. A teacher is not in competition with other teachers. Rather than being threatened by someone else's talent, we should promote it, and we should appreciate it, and we should talk about it, and we should acknowledge it. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said of a certain writer that he met as a youth that he was a man who could rejoice in the talents of others. That's rare in our world. You get people that are stars, they feel like they got to outshine every other star. It's all about them, it's all about competition. James sees that in the teachers of his day, and it's really bothering him a lot. And of course, this goes without saying. Well, I always ask myself, well, why in the world, how is it possible? What's going on? Why are we in this sort of situation? What's slowing God's people down? Why do we let this happen? You know, why are we put up with this, you know? It's amazing what signs you see out there, and they may be more prophetic than we realize, you know. I don't want that sign outside of Donelson here. If once somebody put it up, I think I'd try to take it down, you know. It doesn't belong there. But things do that. They slow us down. Why? Why do we let this happen? Well, this morning we hear some wonderful things that we're not going to let that happen. The Lord's not going to let that happen. Let's put it that way. How do we get trapped in these crazy spiral staircases of mediocrity? Go back to Solzhenitsyn again. One time, Solzhenitsyn said, I think it was in his book, The First Circle, which I'm sure you've all read, or would read if you had the chance. He says, in ancient times, there was a king who made a very unwise decision. He prayed that he might have the power that everything he touched would turn to gold. And King Midas quickly found out that golden apples are very hard to eat. But in our own time, we have a similar ruler who sits upon the throne of Russia, whose name is Joseph Stalin. And he has the Midas curse, the only difference being that everything he touches turns to mediocrity. Now, that's like the classic slam of the universe in a way. Everything he touches turns to mediocrity. Now, we don't want that to happen. And yet the key to that not happening lies in the province of people who share the good news with others and what attitude they use in sharing it. So I'm thinking about this, what James says early on, instability grows from having two sets of priorities, and it's impossible to satisfy both of them. You cannot satisfy both God and your own ego. It's just not going to happen. And then rivalries. Now, I don't know anything about the history of these three church buildings, but I bring my imagination to play here. This is in Russia. You would have never guessed, I suppose. But my feeling is this, that somewhere at some time somebody said, we need a church building in our town, so they put up the one in the middle, okay? A little bit later, somebody said, our church building is very plain. Well, it's probably got room for a preacher and one member, Just look at that, one in the middle. We got to build one that's a little fancier. So I'm guessing they then built the one on the right, wouldn't you? And they made some onion domes, which Russians love to do. Don't know what that architectural feature is all about, but I like it. Years go by and they say, we made a nice try. Let's really build a building that will look better than these other two. To think that they then overdid the onion domes is slightly understated, wouldn't you say? How many did they manage to cram onto that building? It's like, there isn't any room for another one hardly. Well, that's a masterpiece of onion domes, okay. And see, rivalry leads to stupid things like that. I don't know whether that happened here or not, but if it did, I'd be surprised. It looks like something like that happened. So what's at work here? What kind of, well, James says, he puts it this way. Here's a little section, James 3:13 and 14, okay. Now here's, who is wise and understanding among you? Me, I'm wise, I'm understanding. No, you just gave the wrong answer. That just proves you're not, okay. Let you demonstrate it, Bob, by life actions that spring from nobility inspired by gentle wisdom. But whatever you do, don't have any bitter jealousy or partisanship or avid partisanship in your heart, and stop your bragging and lying against the truth. When I first read this, I was like struggling a little bit, like what does he mean lying against the truth? Is that what they're really teaching, false doctrine? Or what does it mean when Jesus said in John 8:32, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free? What does he mean by truth there? Does he mean the Bible? Well, yeah, I would assume, but I think it's a lot bigger than that. I think it's the truth about God, the truth about Jesus, the truth about the way the world is, and the truth about you. And until you face all those truths, including the truth about you, then you're essentially lying. Now, I read a book a number of years ago. It said, if you are an alcoholic, even when you're telling the truth, you're lying. And those of you who have had to live with alcoholics know exactly what I'm talking about. Because you don't even use the truth unless you can use it for some way to serve your addiction. Could it be that people who think they're saying what is true because of their lifestyles and their bitterness and their unhappiness that it doesn't come out as truth? Yes, that's what he's saying. It doesn't come out as truth because even though we're repeating words that are true, who they are makes it a lie. Now that's the real danger of all this business, you see. You can't be an Ann Sullivan to someone if you don't even stay in step with your own character. Well, developing this idea a little more, I thought, well, let's see here. What's needed to solve this problem? Well, James goes back to his stable wisdom, Sophia. So wisdom is required. And let's see if we can make something come up here that looks interesting. Maybe we won't. Or maybe we will. Oh, these I put unwise decisions. Okay, you with me on this? Earlier I showed you the pink couch. That was unwise. Now I go back to unwise. You know, honey, the house we live in, it's not very nice. Let's decorate it up and make it look better. Well, you go. I'll give you freedom. You make it look better, okay? So the guy goes out and, come on, squeezers, let's go back. I go back, start all over, okay. All right, here, okay. I'm going to go back even further in time. It's a nice thing about PowerPoint, you can go back in time. No, you can't. Oh, yeah, here we go. All right, you ready? Ta-da! Come on, slide. I know you're there. Uncooperative slide. Okay, here. Honey, I made the house better. Have we been there before? No, come on. For some reason, I'm just lost. I lost my picture here. It's funny, I kept the text, but I didn't get the picture. Now, what's happening here? No. Okay, can you guys put up with us a little bit more? Okay, let's try it one more time. Let's just sit here a minute, okay? Let's pray that something will appear. I know it's on there. I put it on there and I saw it. Ah, there we go. Let's go one beyond this. Okay. All right, here we go. I made the house better. You ready? Arg! We're not going to see what we made the house better. Okay. Well, apparently, we're not going to get any pictures from now on. All the pictures have disappeared. How strange that is. They were good pictures. Take my word for it. Okay. My frustration is to go back and see why the pictures aren't appearing. This is something I've never run into before. Does anybody know enough about PowerPoint to know this? Okay, there's a picture of Humpty Dumpty here, okay, and he's sitting on a wall. All right, trust me, it really is there. I can't help it if you don't have faith enough to see it. Let me answer the question. What did Humpty Dumpty do that he shouldn't have done and didn't use wisdom? Ovoid shapes do not belong on stone walls. Okay, you're right. Eggs don't sit on walls. All right, and how successful was the attempt to restore Humphrey? I said Humphrey, but it's Humpty, okay. All the king's horses and all the king's men, they couldn't do the job either. So once you get really broken, well, hopefully this will show up when Brian deals with it, and we'll figure out what's going on here. Okay, let's see if this one works, okay. I must have done some kind of crazy animation that hid them, and I didn't mean to. Come on, point. There we go. Confusing directions, okay. This is another problem that we have in misunderstanding and misapplying the information that we get from people in our lives. They confuse us by the directions they give us. I had that happen to me in church. People were saying things to me and they were sort of internally contradictory. I don't know how I can illustrate. Let's see if we maybe if we have any fortune here. It's gone on strike for putting up signs, for putting up anything. See, it just will only show text for some reason. I've never had this problem. Has anybody? Any of you ever had this problem with PowerPoint that it won't show? Shall I start over again with another PowerPoint or what? Well, it's just completely given up on any pictures, hasn't it? Okay. Well, there's two signs that appear here. Trust me. I've never had this happen before. Okay. One of the signs says stop, and underneath it, there are four other signs that say don't go forward, don't go backward, don't go left, and don't go right. Okay, that's what the signs say. Can you imagine that in your head? In other words, stay here the rest of your life at this particular point. Well, that's what happens in church when you get confusing directions. Well, where can I go? And there's no clear direction given to you, so when that happens, you don't really know what to do with yourself. That's how a lot of churches get stagnated, is there's conflicting direction. It's as though the Lord was the author of stagnation, which he is not. And so James shares that with us, and at least we're getting some text, so I hope I've got text all the way. And then he says, bitter jealousy. Now, under bitter jealousy, I had an unbelievable illustration, which you'll have to go online to see. The toxic zeal was also one of my better ones, maybe the best slide I've ever created. But for some reason, the pictures aren't showing up. I've never encountered this. I have no clue what that's all about. Okay, well, here's some text. Thank goodness. Well, there wasn't. Didn't you see? There it is. So James says if you have a bad attitude, even when you're saying something that's true, it turns out to be false. So what are we going to do about this? Well, I think essentially what we have is a kind of Jekyll and Hyde attitude about things. And there was a picture of two professors up there, each with a different attitude. And one was negative and one was positive. And so we need, obviously, some higher wisdom. So I like what James shares here toward the end. Now, take a look at this. Praise the Lord, the text is working. The pictures aren't. I have no idea why. There's some reason why. You see, I believe in a rational universe. Higher wisdom, or the wisdom from above, as the text really says, but the wisdom from above is primarily, or first of all, in other words, at the start, pure. Now, what does it mean by pure? Does it mean ritually pure, like you didn't touch a dead body or something? No, I don't think so. I think by pure means simply transparent. Transparent means not just merely clear, but it also means honest, if you will. Honest communication is a very difficult concept to take in mind. So that means how much, I don't think our culture's built up for us to be very transparent with one another. And is it actually a lie if someone says to you, how are you? And you say, I'm fine, and you're not? Is that a lie? You say, no, Bob, that's not a lie. What that is it facilitates human commerce. We couldn't get through the day if the first person we talked to stopped and told us everything was wrong with them. So we've invented these conventions to be able to survive. And I suppose they're true in every culture. So Russ is going down to Guatemala. He'll go down there and he'll say, ¿Cómo está? And somebody say, Bien, gracias. ¿Usted? Igualmente. So is that really true? So I don't know what to do about that. I know you can't just tell everybody how you feel the first time you run into them, and I don't think that's what James means. I think a certain amount of convention makes life possible in some way. However, we should not get so conventionalized that we can't ever really be honest and open. Once you develop a capacity to know somebody can be trusted. The reason why you don't tell everybody how you feel right off the bat is that some people can't be trusted with the information. And because they can't be trusted with the information, they use it for their own self-centered purposes. And that being so, then, it puts us a little on our guard. But I think we should do everything we can to promote a transparent communication, as much as possible. And I think that's a big step in the right direction, is to get away from convention. And I also like the idea of it being gentle, peaceful, and gentle, easy to approach. There have been some people, when I was younger, I was afraid to go up and talk to. They were so intimidating. I had an 8th grade teacher once call me stupid in class. And actually, to be honest with you, she may have been right that day. But it didn't make me feel really good. But I never asked her another question for the rest of the semester. She shut that door forever on me. And even though she was right in some ways, it was just an easy out for her to get rid of me, you see. A teacher that does that is not a good teacher. Not because I have any anger against her. Actually, she had her own set of problems, really had nothing to do with me. But the thing is, if we're not easy to approach, Dialogues can't be set up very well, you see. And that's a serious problem. But you notice that what he says, that when you're growing, it's full of healthy growth and it's impartial and completely transparent. What does it mean to be a person who is growing? Is it growing something you're supposed to stop at a certain point? I had someone tell me one time, he said, you know, the difference between a child and an adult is, a child is someone who grows up, and you know, from down to up. An adult is someone who grows from side to side. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and I hope it isn't, but I think a lot of people do have the idea that they've mastered about all the information they want to master, you know. They have about as many friends as they want to have. One of the problems we discovered in Florence, among certain people that we were with, was that they already had their quota of friends. I mean, they had all they could do to put up with the ones they had, and there really wasn't room for anyone else much. That's a problem in churches. When I first came to Donelson years ago, people said, this is one of the friendliest churches on the planet. Well, I soon discovered it was. It's just that we were friends with people we already knew. So one of our biggest challenges was start to recognize people that were not in our circle. But we couldn't turn Aunt Minnie down. We had to say hello to Aunt Minnie. That's true, but before you say hello to Aunt Minnie, she won't mind if you go over and say hello to somebody that's a brand new stranger. And we didn't have any eyesight for that. We didn't have any eyes for that at all, you see. So growth then means I'm open to you and I'm transparent. And when I do what's right, James says, then I'm going to develop something beautiful and create growth. Planted by those who are peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. Peace is something you have to make. Now, I don't have any idea whether these two incredibly beautiful slides I've created for the denouement of this piece will come up or not, but I trust that you will believe a lot of work went into this, and here we never have another blank, so it's a disconnect, that's what it is. Okay, thank goodness I had some text on these things. That is the oddest thing I've never run into before. Has anybody how does that happen? I had a picture here of a guy trapped in a wall that said ego around it. Can you imagine that in your head? Ego traps us, you know. So our ego gets us trapped and so forth. What's wrong? Brian's he's pointing at something. It didn't come up, Brian. I don't want to get caught in this anymore. Technology has betrayed me. Someone prayed that this would fail. And they're very effective prayers, obviously, you know. It's just really an odd thing. I had some see, there's actually pictures on it. I've never had this happen. Has anybody ever had this happen before? When you do AV, my friends, you run great risk, okay? Great risk. Paul, numerous times, was betrayed by the audiovisual. And so he gave it up and started just writing books of the Bible. And I can't say that I blame him. But helping people to grow then is our challenge. And on the left is, believe it or not, a picture of Helen Keller. So you just imagine she's sitting over there and helping her grow. Now, I suppose if you went to Ann Sullivan at a certain point and say, well, Ann, what's your mission in life? She'd say, I'm just trying to help people who really have a great deal of ability and a great deal of potential, but it's never been tapped. It's just one person, Helen Keller. It's just one person, Ann. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because that's where it all starts, with one person. So the person that talked to me about the Lord, the person that talked to you about the Lord, Ann Sullivan working with Helen Keller, open up a world of potential. That's all we really need to be aware of, I suppose, when you get right down to it, is that individual. And when that happens, I think something quite wonderful occurs. People are simply touched. Now, go back to Solzhenitsyn once more, if you don't mind. And Solzhenitsyn was sent to the Gulag Archipelago, which is the Russian prison system, for telling a joke about Stalin. He was a captain in the artillery in World War II. He just happened to tell a joke about Stalin, and the political commissar assigned to every unit reported him. He was arrested, deprived of his rank, and sent to Siberia for 5 years for insulting the leader. He's lucky they didn't kill him. While he was there, he got sick with cancer, stomach cancer, which he survived. That's why he wrote the book Cancer Ward. He went then to the infirmary, and there was a Jewish doctor there who had become a Christian. He was a complete atheist himself, as most of the people raised in communist Russia were. The doctor shared with him every day something about Jesus. And at the end of it all, Solzhenitsyn became a very devout Christian. And his Christian influence is reflected in his books over and over again. He's dead now, but he left a little prayer behind called the Lenten Prayer. And I won't quote the whole thing, but I will say here's a line or two from it. Lord, I thank you that you have led me here on the road of my life to a place beyond despair, where I may reflect your glory upon mankind. And all that you shall accord me, and what I am unable to keep, you will appoint others in my place. The prayer is much longer, but that's the heart of it. You have led me here beyond despair. Now that's what actually that doctor, unknowingly and unwittingly, and sharing with this dedicated communist atheist man, made a vast impact in his life and in the life of many, many others as well. So you just don't know, do you, my friends? If you're of a teaching kind of person, if you're that peacemaking, loving, concerned, and pure, transparent individual, that's exactly what God wants. That's his teaching program, so to speak. I apologize for our breakdown in the AV, but that happens. It's going to happen. Suppose we're out in the woods and we didn't even have electricity, it'd be worse. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. So I'm going to try to see what that bug is, and Brian's going to pick up. Brian's been doing a great job, by the way. You should compliment Brian for the wonderful job he did. He takes essentially some very raw material and converts it into something reasonably decent, and we appreciate that. Thank you all for being here.